Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon from everywhere you are. I'm Mohsen from Microsoft Zero to Hero. I'm so happy to be here from another session and another exciting event with Mikhail. Uh, we are Microsoft Zero to Hero. As you know, you can join us our social media or learning room. We cover many topics, data, Azure, Microsoft services, new services in Microsoft Cloud or other things. And actually, before that, join to Mikhail. Let me share some introduction slide. Let me share my slide. Yeah, today we have a great session with Mikhail about the PowerShell and MS Graph API, and I'm so excited about that. Actually, I'm happy to host the Mikhail event, and yeah, let me share some information about Microsoft Learn community. As you know, Microsoft Learn community is a set of the collection of learning content, text, video, audio, or actually lab experience. You can join, you can ask from technical people or other things. There are a lot of content based off your role, based off the topic or the thing. You can join from aka.ms Microsoft Learn community. Actually, about the great news, we are Microsoft Bit. You can in Seattle, or maybe you can join an online session from 21 May till 23. You you have a chance to give a Microsoft certification exam voucher. Actually, don't miss this event. And the last slide is about our code of conduct to be aware of other, be friendly and passionate, be welcome and respectful, be open to all question, viewpoint, be understanding of difference, and finally to be kind and considerate to other in the comment, in the chat, or other things. Now it's the time to add the Mikhail in the stage. Hello, Mikhail.
Hi, welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for you accepted our inviting, and
Yeah.
I'm so happy for your presentation actually, and it's interesting your topic. Yeah,
Okay. So I can go ahead?
yes, a stage for you.
Okay. So let me see how to share my screen. The entire screen and this one. So everyone should hopefully see my slides.
Actually, yes, I see.
Perfect. Let's move one window ahead. So everything should be clear. So thanks for having me. And today we talk about PowerShell and MS Graph API demystified. So a short introduction from my side. Michael Seidl. I'm a Microsoft MVP since 2015 in cloud and data center management. I'm doing automation since 10 and more years. I'm the owner and founder of Automator, a self-service portal for Microsoft automation, and also do consulting in that way. So everything automation is what I love to do, and luckily I can earn money as well with that. Maybe someone already know my blog, TechGuy80, or my other website, automator.com, and also my samples and scripts on GitHub. And for everyone who wants to connect with me, LinkedIn and Seidl M, so my last name and the first of my first name. If you want to connect, do it on LinkedIn. There might be different profiles on Twitter, X, whatever. But to be honest, I'm only active or nearly only active on LinkedIn. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact me and let's have a talk about Graph or PowerShell. So that's what I love. So for today, the agenda, we already did the introduction, so we already checked one point. Then we talk about MS Graph API. What is it? Why should we do it? Why should we use it? And how to use authentication, examples, demo scripting. So we have a lot of demos. And one important note, every example you see today will be online on GitHub maybe a few hours later. So you don't need to do any screenshots or whatever. Everything will be on GitHub afterwards. So feel free, relax, and see what we have today. So Graph API, mostly from Microsoft, is always described as the API to Microsoft 365. For me, it is the one nearly single API to the cloud. So it's not only Microsoft 365, it's also Microsoft Azure. There might be some different APIs maybe to do a VM creation or something like this. That's a different API, but Microsoft really puts a lot of effort in it to have every cloud service accessible via the Graph API. So SharePoint, of course, all the user management in Entra ID, all the app registrations, all Exchange Online stuff, Windows Mobility, Intune, whatever. So if you think about it, if you have to do an automation in the Microsoft Cloud, first you should look if there is an endpoint, an API in Graph API. So this is the future. Everything else will be sooner or later deprecated or removed. So make sure that you go to Graph API if there is an endpoint available. So why should you use MS Graph API? Of course, as I said, Microsoft puts a lot of effort in it to enhance, to bring more endpoints in it, to bring more services to the Graph API. And you don't need to use any specific PowerShell module. Yes, there is a PowerShell module for Graph API. Today, this session will be without a specific PowerShell module. Why? Because I know Microsoft doesn't like to hear that, but it's sometimes a little bit buggy, to be honest. Some features take some time to be available in the Graph API module, in the PowerShell module. So I decided during also my consultancy with customers not to use the PowerShell model, so you do it natively. And that's a big advantage because you can do it the same code on-prem or in the cloud, so you don't need to install any modules. Of course, also a lot of customers are not so happy with one more module again and one more module, so they need to maintain it, they need to update it. There are also some customers don't allow to install any modules, to be honest. So, and you can do it with native PowerShell. I think since version 3, you have invoke REST method command, and that's everything what you need. Okay, so we just need the invoke REST method and native PowerShell, and that's it. As I said already, you have more functionality if you use the native one, because the features from the SDK to the PowerShell model just take some times, months, 2 months, whatever. It is an easy language. Yes, you need some more lines of code, definitely. We will show the examples later on, but it's easy to handle. So if you're new to Graph API or maybe to REST and other APIs, give yourself a try and see how easy it can be. Yes, you have some more lines, but it will be easy to learn. Today we talk about PowerShell. That's the only way I can script, the only scripting language I can use. But the same methods you can use with any scripting language, any programming language, whatever. So it's always the same, okay? And as I said, it's one API to the Microsoft Cloud. So how does it work? You do a REST call to an HTTP or HTTPS. That's it. So in our case, it is graphmicrosoft.com version 1. So there's also some beta. There will be maybe a version 2 in the future, but right now the base URL is graphmicrosoft.com. After the slash, after version 1, you need to address the endpoint. So what endpoint do you want to talk with? We have some examples: the users, the groups, teams, to-do, Azure app registrations, client management. So if you go into Intune, you have client management, whatever. So that's the next step. So what entity, what endpoint do you want to talk? And then we have 5 comments. And that's easy to use. You have a get, the post, the put, the patch, and delete. And everything is related to the comment. So if you want to read something, you use get. If you want to update something or create something, that depends a little bit on the API, but everything is good documented. You use post, put, or patch. Okay, so mostly patch for your update, put and post for create something new. And if you want to delete something or remove something, you use delete. We will see that a little bit later. You can use Graph Explorer. That's from Microsoft, a GUI-based, a web-based GUI from Microsoft to learn how Graph API works and how the REST API works. And today we talk about Graph API, but every other API, or nearly every other API, who is a good one, works the same way. And if you do automation and if you do it with PowerShell, if you use Graph API, you can use most of other APIs from any other vendors. Everyone is doing the same: the get, post, put, patch, delete, the base URL, the endpoints, whatever. So it's not only for Microsoft; it's common way to work with APIs. And of course, very, very important is you have to learn or know how JSON format is working. So JSON is everything. So at least if you just want to get something, that's not so bad. But if you want to write something, you have to put your information in a JSON body and send it to the cloud. So if you, for example, if you want to create a new user, you need to put all the information in the JSON file, the first and the last name, the email address, whatever, in a JSON format, and post it to the cloud, to the API. So the next one is we need to authenticate. Of course, security is very important. So we need to make sure authentication is doing correctly and good and make sure that no one else gets the credentials. We have we have multiple options to authenticate to MS Graph API. We will just touch the surface of authentication security. We can do a whole session about that topic, okay? But just take the options and see what we can use. And there are some difference in what endpoint supports, what authentication and so on. But basically, there are two different ways. We have Azure App Registrations. So I think everyone knows what an Azure App Registration is. So every department in your company is over the past few years have asked you to create an Azure App Registrations for this and for that and for those. So you create an Azure App Registrations, you do a client secret, a certificate for authentication, and then you give that Azure App Registration delegate or application permission. We see in the next slide what is different. Or in this Azure App Registrations also has a system assigned identity. In the old-fashioned way, a service account. So in Azure, in the cloud, it's called system assigned. So this automation account has a system assigned identity. This can be used and delegate any permissions. So you have two ways: Azure App Registrations and give them permission, or you can use the system user assigned identity and give that user account permission. So to see the difference between delegate permission and application permission. So in the Azure App Registration, you can then give or provide permissions, what this app registration can do. We will see it later on in the demos. Then you can decide if you want to delegate permissions or you want to have application permission. And you see we see Spider-Man and Hulk, and that, in my opinion, shows what the difference is. If you use delegate permission, then a user needs to sign in with that authentication. So it's not very good for automation in the background, no input automation. So in this case, a user needs to sign in. And with that permission, this is a combination of the app registration permission and the user's permission, so the effective permission of the user. So if the Azure app, the app registration says you can send emails and the user signs in, he can only send emails from his account, not from anyone else. So that's the delegate permission, because the user only has the permission to send from his own email box. If you do the same with application, and you give the app registrations application permission to send emails, one difference is you don't need any user interaction. And the other one is you automatically can send from every mailbox in your environment. So that's the big difference between delegate and application. So make sure you do at least privilege permissions as you need it. Don't need to application permission because it's easier. You can do a really mess if someone gets the secret and the client ID. It is like a password to your domain admin, for example. Okay. So if the app registration has the permission to create and delete users, he can create and delete every user if you do it with application permission. So be aware that you really take the correct permission type. So now finish with the talk, and now let's see our demos. As I said before, we have the Graph Explorer. So Graph Explorer is a web-based GUI for Microsoft to learn a bit of Graph API. Is you sign in with your account, and then you can try a little bit. And you saw at the beginning, we talked in the slides to, if you want to read something, you do a get. You see the version, we do the version 1, and you see the URL. There might be some URLs to get from the signed-in user. So in this case, give me my information. And if you run the code, I get my information from my logged-in user. You saw the other example that we use the endpoint, and then we want to talk about Jasmine. Let me see, automator.com. So that's the URL what I talked in the slide. So the base URL version 1, then the entity or the endpoint users. And in this case, we can use the UPN to target a specific user. In this case, we want to see Jasmine. And now we get the information from Jasmine. Of course, I need the permission to read the information, but then we see Jasmine's information, a phone number, a job title. So everything is here. So you can browse the left side from different endpoints. You see the groups. So sometimes it is German, sometimes it's English. I haven't figured out to change it, but it's about groups. And here I want to see all the groups in my environment. And now I see it. So you get all the groups in your environment back as a JSON format, and you can browse, and you see all the endpoints. So you can easily build your query and try it in the GUI before writing your first code in PowerShell. What else I want to highlight is, and I haven't said it very often in the past 20 years, Microsoft is doing a really good job when it comes to documentation in that part. So everything what you need to know about Graph API and how to request something, how to write something, how to update anything, it is really everything is covered in the learnmicrosoft.com in the Graph API section. And you see if you want to get a specific user, what you already did. In our example, everything is documented. You see the permissions you need. So what the permissions the Azure App Registration needs as a permission. You see if it's delegate or application permission. And you see the HTTP request, so the get, what you saw before, and the me or the users and the UPN. You also see some examples what the return looks like. So as I said, Microsoft is doing a really good job in that documentations. So let's see our first example to get Jasmine's user details. And let's switch and to see the Azure App Registration. So what you see here is what we need to authenticate is a client ID, a tenant ID, and a client secret. And very important, and it's also standing here in the code, don't do this at home, okay? So don't store your credentials native in the code. It's only for the demo right now today to make it easier to understand. At least I put the secret in the text file, so it's not on the recording. Because if you have every 3 of those values, you can do everything in my tenant, and that's not good. So don't do this at home. It's only for demo today. Store your credentials in any way in a credential manager, in Azure Automation, in the variables, whatever. Don't do it here in the code. natively. So for authentication, we need the client ID, the tenant ID, and the client secret. To get that, you have to create an Azure app registration. We did that already before as a preparation for the presentation today. And let's see, it should be a test Azure 0 to Hero. So what I did, I created a new app registrations. This gives me the client ID and the tenant ID. This is important for the authentication. What else do we need is a certificate or a secret. And you see here the secret is already make invisible. So you can't get the secret only if you create it. Then you can copy the value and then it's gone. So there's no way to get that value back if you miss to copy. So you need to create a new secret. And the most important one is to provide the permission to the app. And when we switch back to the documentation, we want to get user and we want to update a user. So we want to update Jasmine's details. And for this, we need user read write all, directory read write all. So those permissions we need for the application. I already did that. So we have user read write all, user read, and so on. So if you want to add a permission, it's easy. Just go to add permission, select the Graph API, then you can switch between delegate and application permission. I also recommend to not have one Azure app registration with all permissions, so separate it for each service, for each automation task, whatever you do. So don't give one app registrations a lot of permissions, only do it really more app registrations and less privileges. So you choose delegate or application permission. Then you can look for user and you see the user create, read all. So then you check the box and add the permission to the app registration. That's it. In the end, you do the admin consent. So everything is granted for the whole application and everyone can use it. So that's the preparation. Azure app registration, given permission, and a secret or certificate. With those information, we then can just run the code. That's my variables. So I want to work with Jasmine and I want to update her job title to 2024. And I want to give her a new number. It is 9999, whatever. So that's my variables. And first we want to see how to authenticate. That part is always the same. So that few lines is the same code during all our examples today. You just need to go to Microsoft Graph to get an access token and build your header to authenticate and to work with Graph API. So that's everything, every time the same. Everything looks good. At least nothing is red in the window below, so everything looks good. Now I want to get user Jasmine's information. So that should be the same we saw before in the Graph Explorer. So when we go back here, you see we did a get. Just let me switch here. It was users and it was jasmine.hofmeister@automator.com. And if you run that query, it is the same result you saw in the PowerShell. So you really see the Graph Explorer is a really good entry point to work with Graph API, to dig into Graph API. You can try something new. Microsoft is helping you to build the URL and everything else. So that's really, really nice. So we see Jasmine has that information. You can also double check that in the cloud. So if you go back to the users, we look for Jasmine's user. Today the cloud is a little bit slow, but I think it's okay still. So we see her properties, and it should have the same values we see in the back. We see Jasmine has this telephone number, and we see Jasmine is customer manager for Azure 0 to Hero. So now we want to change this to 0 to Hero 2024 and a different telephone number. So we do that variables. That's the get. And now, as I said at the beginning, we want to send something. We don't want to get anything. We want to send information to the cloud. And let's see the documentation, because I really like the documentation and I want you to like it as well. So here we see, I want to update a user. So we see the permissions, and we see here we need to do a patch, and also the same users and the user principal. So the only difference is we do, before we did a get and jasmine.automator.com, now we do a patch, okay? And now we need to send some information. And for this case, we build a JSON a file with the job title and the mobile, the telephone number. We set this variable a little bit above. So when we see the content of that year 2024 and the new number. And that's the URL we built. And that's the command to go to the cloud, say, hey, we want to update Jasmine's information and we want to give her a new job title and a new mobile phone. So we do that, and at least there is nothing red. So that's every time it is good when there's no red or bad response. So we can see it in the API directly, and we see she has a new job title and a new telephone number. And now maybe hopefully we see it. Sometimes it takes some time to reflect in the GUI. You see it here. She still have the old phone number and the old title. So don't be afraid. The API is always working with the changes immediately, but the GUI sometimes takes some seconds, sometimes a minute. Let's see. So don't be afraid if the GUI is not showing. Yeah, you see it. It's still the wrong values. So don't be afraid when the GUI don't show the correct values. The truth is always the API. So as you see, we get the information from Jasmine and we see she has a new title and she has a new phone number. Everything is good. Don't be afraid if the GUI still shows the old value. Today it really takes a long time. Usually it takes 10 to 20 seconds, but don't be afraid, everything is good. If you don't forget, we will check out the next examples. So that was the first one. So get a user, update a user, so we get something and we patch something. That's a common example to create or to update new users, to create new users or to update existing users. So for example, you have an HR system, which all the information are stored for job title, department, what location he is, first name, last name, whatever. And those can be easily synced to Azure to keep everything in sync, because the main data, the main information should be in the HR system, and from that synced to any other systems, in our case, Azure or Entra ID. So for the groups, in our case, we want to create a group and add a user to a group. Also a very common example, to create groups, to add users to groups, to remove users from groups. So also we have a very good documentation which shows us how to create a group. We need those permissions. We need to do a post, and our endpoint is groups. And we need to send all the information in a body. What kind of group is it? Is it mail enabled? Is it security enabled? What display name, what description, whatever. And some examples. So once again, and maybe it's not the last time for today, if you're not sure, go to learnmicrosoft.com and see the documentation. It's really, really good. And also do it on a common way and regular basis. So it's still very good. So once again, we do the same. We have the same client ID tenant. We have our base URL, and now we have defined what group do we want to add or create with a new description, and we want to put Jasmine as a member to it. So we run that code. We do the authentication again. That's the same code we do, so that's every time the same. That's the same code. But now we build, as I said at the beginning, we want to send something to the cloud, so we need to create a body. So we need to create an information in a JSON format. Of course, there are different ways to create JSON in PowerShell. There's also maybe a nicer way to do it dynamically, but it's then hard to read if you start with PowerShell and the Graph API. So I have written everything line by line. So if you want to create dynamic JSONs, it's also possible, but not today. It should be an easier example for this session. So we create mail enabled false, a security enabled, and so on. So that's our body we filled. And that's the way to create the group, hopefully without an error. That's good. So when we now check Jasmine, yeah, still okay. Cloud is very slow today, but it will reflect the changes soon. So we now see the groups. Hopefully the group is already there. If not, we should get a problem. Yes. So we created the demo 0 to hero group. And now we want to put a user in that group, okay? So for this, we need the user ID. So from Jasmine, we need her ID. We do it with that code. And that's the body, the information to send to the cloud that we want to update a group's membership. So we go to the endpoint groups and members, and we want to send her a body with the user information. So that's my body. Let's see the result, how it looks like. You see it below. You see here, that's the object ID of Jasmine's user. Okay, we did that in the lines above. And that's the code to give Jasmine into that group. So let's see. Hopefully the cloud is a little bit faster to the right now. So we have one user in it, and we want to see the members. And Jasmine should be not here. Yeah, she is. So Jasmine is already a member of that group. So you see also a very common example to create groups, maybe delete groups, to add, remove group memberships, and so on. Next one, that's a very simple one. And it is now more than nearly a year that basic authentication is removed from the cloud, from Exchange Online. So you should already have a different solution, because you cannot send a mail with Exchange Online and basic authentication. So that's the way to go. You want to send an email via Graph API and PowerShell. So also documentation, the endpoint is send mail, we do a post, and we need those permissions. And as I said, the difference between application and delegation, if I have application permission, I can send an email from every mailbox in my company. Otherwise, there is a different way, but if I don't do anything and just do the app registrations, application permissions, and mail send, I can send emails from every single mailbox. There might be many reasons you don't want to have this, okay? So take care about this. So send mail, it is the same code, the client ID, the mail sender, the recipient, the authentication, so that's always the same. We run that code. That's my body. So we want to send an email. Another information is much more than just create a group, okay? So we want to have a subject. We want to have a body, HTML with line breaks. We want to have the recipient. And if we want to have it in the send items. When you go back to the documentation, there are many more properties you can do here, okay? But we just keep it simple. So we set the recipient, you can do BCC, CCC recipients, and so on. So that's the body. And that's also to send emails. And I should be logged into my, and I want to see the unread. Yes, and here it is, my mail. So you can simply send an email to Graph API, also with attachments and dynamic content, whatever. But you need to use it. So as I said, basic authentication is already deprecated since more than a year, or nearly a year. It was August last year, I think. So if you use Exchange Online to send emails from any other applications, you already had to find a different way. Hopefully you use Graph API. If not, take a look at this one. So a highly requested function or automation to use Graph API to send emails. And a lot of customers using PowerShell, so you can see that. The next one is to create a team. Also very requested from our customers, and they have a lot of teams. They want to have maybe a single front end to someone can request a team, and then they have an automation to create a team. So in our case, I want to create a team, 0 Hero 2024. It should be a public team. You can have a private team as well. And I want to be the owner and the member, of course. The authentication. Just need to take a look at the time. We are very good, but I think we need to speed up a little bit. So, of course, if you want to create a team, you can do the same. You need to store the information, as I said, in a JSON, and that's a very small, few lines of possible ways to define your team. Nearly every single setting you can do in the GUI when you create a new team can be done here with the JSON, the configuration. So you can create every single team with your standards. Maybe you want to hide a tab. Maybe you want to rename a tab. Maybe you want to, I don't know, remove the setting that everyone can invite someone. Every single setting. Let's see the documentation. I'm not sure if everything is in the documentation, what you can do, but there is a really long list. Yeah, you see it here. There's a really long list, and that's not everything. What you can provide by the time you create a team. So you don't have to go to the team and click here and click there and everything. Everything can be defined on the point of creation. So run that code, run the authentication, set the main things. We just want to create a simple team and visibility public. That's it, just for demo, and run the code. And I should be right now a member of that team. Yeah, you see it in the back. I don't want to yeah, you see it here. I have 0 to Hero. Okay, now Teams is switching, yeah, to a new client, but you saw it in the screen. So I was set as the owner. The description was set, so everything was fine. As I said, if you have to create many teams in your environment, in your company, use that way because you can define everything from scratch. And the last thing is you can create a to-do or a task. So you can also automatically create to-dos, maybe from a project list, from an Excel sheet, from any other sources, create a to-do in any one person other to-dos. So in this case, I want to create a to-do for me. I defined that I have a list 0 to Hero. I want to create a new task and so on. I do the authentication, and that's I need to get the ID of the list, and that's the body to send the information. Also here the same, you can do a lot more properties and settings when create a to-do, and we send it. And if we go back to the browser, 0 to Hero, yes, here is my to-do. So I created that automatically from PowerShell in my to-do list. So also a lot of customers doing project management in any other systems, but they want to have the to-dos in their planner or Microsoft To-Do. That's the way you can do it. So that's the examples. So now we switch back to the presentation. Now it is your time. If you have any questions, put it in the chat or anyway. So make sure you have everything ready so we can talk about. So you saw a few examples, user groups, teams, and so on. You can do a lot more. What I haven't shown today, but also very requested, is endpoint management or client management. So Intune or endpoint, I don't know what the actual name is, but you know what I mean. So the client management. Update any properties, read the serial number, and or make put them in a group to install a software. Everything can be done with Graph API. the Azure app registrations can be done automatically via Graph API. So you can, what you saw at the beginning in the browser to create the Graph API, the secret, the permissions, everything can be done directly over the Graph API endpoint. Of course, the whole Entra ID user group org management. Sync the information from your HR system to Entra to keep every user up to date. Sync the pictures. That's often requested from customers. They have a central database to store the pictures of the employees, but they need to create it they need to store it in Entra and Exchange Online and local AD. And the best way is to write it to Entra ID or to Azure via Graph API. And from that point, the system is automatically sync the picture to every other application in the correct format. So that's a huge, completely really good way to sync the pictures, because before that, you have to sync it in the specific size to Active Directory, in a different size to Exchange Online, and a different size to maybe to Teams. Now you can just sync a high-resolution picture to Entra ID via Graph API, and Microsoft takes care of the rest. Of course, audit logs. What user logged in, maybe not the last 2 months, and then you can deactivate. So that's the point. SharePoint, of course. I'm not a SharePoint guy, so I cannot tell you much about SharePoint. Patches, whatever. So everything is, or nearly everything is in Graph API. So if you want to do anything in Graph API or in Azure, in Microsoft Cloud, make sure you go to Graph API and see if there is an endpoint. So the end is near. So as I said, if you have any questions, put it in the chat or in any way. You can see my examples on GitHub. So I will upload them soon on GitHub. And use MS Graph API to replace deprecated modules. So Microsoft deprecated a lot of PowerShell modules in the last months, years, whatever. Nearly everything can be replaced with native Graph API, what we saw today. And once again, the last time, if you want to stay in contact with me, if you have any questions, Graph API, feel free to contact me. So you can contact me on LinkedIn. And then you can ask any questions if you need help. I'm happy to help because I really love Graph API and PowerShell. So I'm happy to assist, and then someone else can feel how easy it is and what you can accomplish by using Graph API. So for this, thank you. And as I said, if you have any questions, just feel free to put them in the chat. And I think Mozan will take over.
Yeah. Thank you, Mikhail, for your presentation. Actually, yes, guys, if you have any question, you can add in your comment. We can ask from Mikhail. And actually, thank you, Mikhail, for your support after that session, your LinkedIn or other things. And before the jump to question, maybe if guys have, as I see in your presentation, you point of the security API and you told the client secret or certificate. Just to clarify, as I truly understand, you mean is client need to install a specific certification to authenticate the API service. Am I right?
If you want, sorry, if you want to use a certificate for authentication, then you can do a local certificate, upload that to the Azure app registrations, and then can use to authenticate. So there is the secret, what you saw in the example, that is a long password, or you can do a certificate. That's a local signed certificate. You have to upload it to Azure, and then you can use that.
Yeah, that's right. We have a comment from Raj. I'm not sure he's in the chat. I will show you.
Here is the chat. Sorry, I was at the wrong window. So
yeah.
So PowerShell is based for scripting. What is the use case for developing SDK? PowerShell is based for scripting, utilizing Graph QI in scripting. What is the use case for? Okay, maybe Prudvi, can you just rewrite the questions, because I do not get it really. And maybe I'm definitely not a dev. So if you look for anything for SDK or development, I might be the wrong guy for this.
And the next question is.
Yes. So as I said, don't store the credentials natively in the code. There are different ways. So we heavily work with Azure automation. So there's a way to store the credentials in the variables of the automation account, or you can use I forgot the name. There is a credential management in Azure. The vault, a key vault. You can also use that one. Or we have customers have a third-party tool to store credentials and passwords, and they get it on the run with the PowerShell code out from their system. But as I said, don't write it natively in the code. There is a way to store it as encrypted XML file, PowerShell native. You can also do that way. But I would recommend it depends where your PowerShell scripts run and everything, but you might use, you might have already a system to store credentials and try to get them out of that system. So that would be my suggestion.
Yeah, thank you. I think there is no other questions, guys. Thank you again, Mikhail, for your presentation.
Thank you.
And I hope to have you to another session in the future.
Yeah.
And thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
And try weekend. Bye-bye.